Katie, bar the door. Elk season is as close can get. So little time and so many questions from folks getting ready to hit the mountains. So, y'all, today's show is dedicated to you and your questions sent in to our ElkBros Mailbox. And stay tuned because the next show after this one will be live on our ElkBros YouTube channel. So excited for the live. But for today, time to kick the tires and light the fires. ElkBros Mailbox style. So my friends, pull up a chair, adjust your volumes just right, and welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com, with your hosts Gilbert Ornelas and elk hunting coach Joe Giglia. You want to hunt elk, and they live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 30,000 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Hello there, everyone. If it's your first time with us, glad to have you. Hope you enjoy our show. And as always, for those blue collar hunters following our show and grinding it out with us every week, welcome back to Elk Camp. I'm Gilbert Ornelas, the host of your show, coming to you from Spring, Texas. And joining me today, we've got our elk hunting coaches and the owner of the Western Contours podcast and Western Fly Covers, none other than Mr. Guy Duplantier is in the house. We got the ninja, Mr. Leroy Chavez from Cimarron, New Mexico, and WWJGD, what would Joe Giglia do in the house? And y'all, it's time to introduce another of our incredible ElkBros coaches that is a huge part of our ElkBros family, Mr. Chico Gallegos in the house. What's going on, fellas?
Hey, man, I figured out now it's Chico and the Man.
Chico and the Man. Great show back in the day.
Yeah, man.
Now we're showing our age, Joe.
Chico, tell everybody hello, man.
How's it going, everybody? Glad to be here.
Glad to have you, my brother.
I was looking for that Chico and the Man song I got on my playlist here.
Chico, don't get discouraged, the Man. I can remember it, man. What a song. Freddie Prinze, man.
You lost me on that one, buddy.
You got to go back and see if you can find that guy. Some really cool shows with Freddie Prinze. And who was the other guy that played in that, Joe? Freddie Prinze, and there was his sidekick. I'm trying to remember that guy's name. Right. Wasn't Jack Klugman, but it was something like that. I can't remember.
Eddie Albert.
That's it. Chico's right.
Eddie Albert. Don't be careful of telling him that too much. All right. Okay. Don't be telling him he's right too much over there.
You got to listen up, Joe.
Yeah.
You got to pay attention.
Hey, so Chico, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, man.
Oh gosh, well, I live in Las Vegas, New Mexico right now. I've known Coach Joe here for about 40. I was doing the math, about 40 years now.
Wow.
Coach Joe was one of my football and track coaches.
When he was 80?
He was one of my coaches back in the mid to late 80s. And so we actually started hunting together when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I was 15 and Coach Joe wanted to upgrade. He had a PSC. I think it was a PSC phaser.
Nova.
PSC. Nova. Oh, that's right. The Nova. You wanted the phaser.
Yeah.
And so he sold me his old Nova. I still have it, actually.
Wow.
And we used to shoot, that was fingers and instinctive for a long time.
From the land of antiquity.
Hunted turkey, hunted deer. I think I was just about 15 years old. But I got family up in Dulce. I'm Hickory Apache, and my dad's family is from the San Luis Valley in Colorado. And born and raised here in northern New Mexico. Been hunting all my life.
Chico, you still shoot fingers and instinctive?
No, I kind of went with the times, but
crossed over to the nuclear side.
I have a longbow that I still shoot.
Cool.
I pull that out every once in a while.
Yeah, and it's really cool. And when he says he's hunted his whole life, he was also in the tribe. They have people that hunt for the elders, right? Mm-hmm. They have and so he actually did that for a number of years, didn't you, Chico?
Yeah, that was several years ago when I spent when I spent some more time. I lived in Albuquerque, so I was a little closer, and I spent a little bit more time up there. And then some of the guys that I used to hunt with, unfortunately, most of the guys that I hunted with up there a long time ago have passed. There were several guys that were hunting buddies, but they're gone now. But yeah, I've been doing hunting, fishing, horseback, just spending time spending time outside in the mountains as much as I can along the rivers, and then whatever terrain there was, from what's cool about Vegas is if you go 20 minutes east, you're in the canyons and
yes,
Cañon Largo. You're
yeah.
You're out there in the plains. You go north, you're up in the high country in no time. So from here, you have it all. You can get to it in a hurry.
Yeah, Chico, when you say you hunted for the elders, is that like a prestigious position to be bestowed upon you to be able to go and do those things? I would think that carries a lot of weight in the tribe, right?
Most definitely, and it's there's a process for that, and prayers that go along with it, and how you conduct yourself is important, because it's nourishing the elders, and it's nourishing their families. And when you harvest an animal, word gets out pretty fast, so that everybody shows up at the house.
That's so cool.
Whoever the elder is, and they share, they'll cook, and so it's an honor, and it's a big deal. But you get to learn a lot about the animals, and you get to learn a lot about yourself, and kind of your place in that whole thing with your community, with the natural world, and it's all connected. And these animals are your relatives. It's a very profound, serious thing when you take a life. And so but we're all, I tell my hunters, we're ending up in the same place. We came from the spirit world.
Yep.
We're in the physical world. Our bodies are going back to the earth just like theirs.
For sure.
So we're
I got chills, bro.
Yeah. And
Really
Chico,
cool.
Chico, what's your day job in the concrete jungle?
So my day job in the concrete jungle, I'm going on 30 years practicing law. So I've been a practicing attorney for almost 30 years. I've had a general practice, been a solo practitioner for almost that entire time. And so
what type of law, Chico?
Well, in rural New Mexico, you have to be able to do it all. You have to be able to do a little bit of everything.
From personal injury on, huh?
I focused a lot on criminal defense, some property law, and then Indian law. So now I focus on Indian law. I proudly represent the Pueblo Tesuque right now as their general counsel.
Awesome, man. Yeah, my whole family are attorneys, judges here in the Texas, Houston area. So my cousins are attorneys. Their siblings are attorneys. I mean, so yeah, I get it. It's a cool profession.
The cool thing about looking like me is if I don't tell anyone they're a lawyer, they never guess that's what they do.
Yeah.
If I don't say it, they don't know it.
He's the true Lincoln lawyer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Back when when Chico was 15, 16 years old, I was like 24, and we would go turkey hunting before school started. So I'd pick him up, and we'd grab the shotguns, and we'd go and we'd kill a turkey, and then we'd go right back to school so we could be on time. Man, you got the shotguns and the turkeys in the vehicle, and but those were the days, man.
I know, brother. Can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
You show up now to school with a gun and going to prison.
Blood on the pants, right?
Yeah,
man. Yeah, nobody worried about that then, man. You didn't get funny looks. It was kind of a little bit different time. And he's also a heck of a dancer, man. He does Native American dances, and his outfits are just unbelievable that he has.
Yeah.
So,
he had one of his traditional bustles and stuff on the wall the other day when we had him on, Joe. It was really cool to see all the feathers and eagle feathers and stuff like that. So really neat.
That's really also an honor. The style that we dance, that I dance, and some of my friends and relatives It's a northern traditional style. So
We should have had that in the Olympics, brother.
that's right. I
All
agree.
that break dancing.
Well, that's the break dancing's gone from what I understand, man. So that was whoever got that gold, man. That's a heck of a collector's item because it was one time and
One of a kind. One of a kind. Yeah.
You know why
I'm
it's
probably
gone,
going to
right?
get some hate, from all that. Joe. Sorry.
You know why it's gone, right? Did you see that lady from Australia?
No.
Oh Lord, man, find that. That thing has to be like one of them memes that reaches like 94 billion people.
Better than the dude on the pole vaulting?
Dude. you watch this thing and you are awestruck.
Oh, I got you.
It makes Joe look like Joe is like Fred Astaire on I mean, I was watching it. I'm like, what is this? And then turn the volume up and it was the Olympics. And I'm like, wait a minute, breakdancing in the Olympics? And then the what? Just look for it, boys.
No softball, no baseball, but we got breakdancing, baby.
Yeah. Oh man, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. One of the funniest things I've seen in a long time, though, I'll tell you that.
Pickleball's coming next, man. That's for the overage group. So
Chico, well, I think I can speak for all of us here, brothers. We're very honored to have you as part of the team, especially the history that you have with El Jefe there and the mountains and the land and the animals. And man, we're very honored to have you as part of our team, brother.
I'm honored as well. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
Hey, I'm gonna just a little bit of announcement. The ElkBros live Q&A show, so that everybody knows when that is and when you can tune in. That's going to be August 28th, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, on our ElkBros YouTube channel. So, that'll be the night that we're going to do our. We're going to find a winner for our Spin a Winner wheel, and we're also going to do some. We're going to have some winners or one or two winners from our live audience as well for a few things. So you guys be sure to subscribe to our channel. Go to our ElkBros YouTube channel, subscribe, turn on notifications so that you don't miss the live event. That's going to be the 28th. And shoot, I think it's 3 days later, we're in Colorado elk hunting, man. So that's going to be the one. That's going to be the last one you're going to hear from us in a little while.
So we're on the mountain.
Yep, we're going to be on the mountain, man.
Hey, what's the giveaway on the Spin a Winner wheel?
We generally do an ElkBros soloist tube,
and that's the last one before season, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll throw in a pursuit poncho to sweeten that up a little.
Oh my goodness!
Man. Shoot, the pot got thicker.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, man.
Pursuit poncho, man.
Appreciate it, guy.
And that's 8 o'clock Mountain Time.
8 o'clock Mountain Time, ElkBros YouTube channel. All right.
8 o'clock Mountain Time.
Yep. All right.
Yeah, and a little bit of announcement here. Myself, Luis Gonzalez, the leader of the Venezuelan Mafia, August 24th, here in Houston, Texas, actually Spring, Texas. Texas Archery, best archery shop in the state of Texas, will be giving a calling seminar and talking everything elk from noon to 3 p.m. August 24th. At
noon to 3 p.m.
Noon to 3 p.m. It's $30 to get in. Everybody that shows up gets a ElkBros signature diaphragm. If 100 people show up, we're going to work like heck to have them all. If not, we'll get your name and number and get something out to you guys. But you'll have an ElkBros signature series diaphragm, which is just about half the cost of the entry.
Oh, dude, and then look. Name and number, You guys, first come, first daggum serve. So y'all get in there and get one, man.
You heard what I said.
I come from a family 6. You come late, you ain't getting. That's all it is, man.
Y'all show up. We can't wait to see everybody there, man. We're going to talk if you guys are going out west, y'all got to understand you better be armed with some knowledge and understand the basics of calling, and we'll get that knocked out for sure.
Yep. And look, I've done a lot of seminars, and what I find out is there's probably, if I had a group of 50 people, there's probably 1 or 2 people that really call. You know what I mean? I think that's something that, man, people just need to really work at. They just don't realize how critical that is, man.
What do you think that is, JoJo? Because I mean, we talk about it as coaches, right? We answer questions and we get an onslaught of different questions, but it's weird that we don't get the questions geared toward the calling. Like people don't prioritize the calling. It's just strange to me.
Yeah, we actually have a couple of those questions in this one tonight, and I think it's just because it's kind of like the guitar, man. Some people just don't have the skill set and don't want to spend the time to get that skill set. And it's not the sexy, man. It's not the shooting. It's not the camo. It's not, the toys are really great, but the calling, man. All I can tell you is this: it has been the reason for my success.
I 100% echo that sentiment, mine too, as well. I will tell you guys, it is the number one reason why the 5% are who they are. And they're 95% of that 5%. And it's the guys that can make things happen. And to answer your question, Guy, I think a lot of them, when you go to Mexico and no habla, it's really hard to understand what everybody's asking you and what everybody's saying. You follow me? So when they don't understand the language to begin with, they're just trying to mimic what they hear most of the time.
But
and
that's even better than not.
I understand that. But when you don't know the language, it's really hard to order a biscuit when you can't say, I want a biscuit, So when they hear elk talking, it's really hard for them to know what to say back other than just mimicking things.
But that goes to my point of why not prioritize.
I agree.
That aspect. I mean, we get a ton of gear. Like I'll get the gear questions I get are 100 times the amount of calling questions, or you know what I mean? So it's like there needs to be a level of priority. And I'm not sure if that's a market thing because we're pushing certain products and things like that.
Absolutely part of that, man. I mean, and what people don't realize is I don't care what weapon you shoot, what arrow is on it, what sharp point, and how, what your camo looks like. And I don't care if you can bench press 300 pounds or 90 pounds. If you don't do something to create an encounter and get the animal in front of you, all that stuff is moot point, man. Yeah. And elk hunting is about creating encounters.
Opportunities.
There's two ways to get those opportunities. One is to hike and hope that your paths cross at the right time. And then the other one is to make them come to you, to create those opportunities. And there's multiple ways to do that. So I think some people get out there and they watch a lot of YouTube and they think that, man, they just scream this bugle on this device or a hoochie or something like that, and things are going to come running into them, and it ain't so. And then they get frustrated, with that.
And then the mountain whips them.
Yeah.
The mountain whips them, man, because it's different,
You know what, Coach? I think too, and I think the environment that you're creating with this coaching scenario is it gives people a safe place to practice too, because a lot of people don't want to screw up in front of other if they think someone's an expert caller or an expert hunter, they don't want, and you say, hey, let me hear your best, whatever call it is. They don't want to do it because they don't want to be embarrassed and they don't want to screw up. So creating a good environment and say, look, there's no bad call. Let's just figure it out. I used to do team rope a lot. I used to do a lot of team roping, and when you're practicing, sometimes there's guys there that you don't want to throw a bad loop in front of them because then they give you hell the rest of your life.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, but it does have a chilling effect. I think that's just the human psyche. It has a chilling effect on you wanting to go out and practice and get better with people who are better than you, so that you can up your game. If you're not comfortable with yourself and can laugh it off and say, screw you guys, I don't care. I'm here to practice and I'm here to get better. They're not going to do it. So they just ignore it. They put it off until that's the last priority for them.
Yeah. And you're not calling in people. That's the thing, man. You are not calling in people. And them elk ain't going to laugh at you. That ain't going to happen.
That's not true. They laugh at my ass all the time.
but you know what? Guy, people can buy gear and look the part.
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying?
Fake it till you make
they can fit in with the gear. And, you know, when they come across other people, but you know, that's not what it's about, man. It's about doing the stuff that's going to be able to punch a tag with, you know. So
I was going to say, you can't fool yourself and you can't fool the mountain if that's the case, right?
No,
I mean,
the grind knows.
Yep.
Yeah.
The game, we always tell our players, man, the game don't know who's playing it, but it knows how it's played.
And you can get out there and come across an elk, you know, where the timing happens and it's right.
Yeah.
But what happens with that is that is so dependent on so many variables for that to occur. And like I tell people, you know, I don't want elk to hide and me seek them. Then it's easy for them to see me. They're still, I'm moving, right? They make a living. They live every day trying to survive. And so they make a living at being able to see that movement, smell that scent, hear that, you know, that noise. They make a living at that so they can survive. So I don't want them hiding and me seeking them. I want to hide and have them seeking me, because now my opportunity grows because I am still and they are moving, right? So that, I tell you, man, calling. It's huge, man. It's huge. Okay.
It really is. And that's why I wanted to let guys know. And there's a lot of guys that are coming out west from the Houston area. And I wanted guys to know we're here to help. You know, we're not going to make fun of you. We're going to help you start the basics and come out there and make the right sounds and understand the language a little bit. Some of the basic things to get started with. The Mafia will be there. Luis will be there to talk with you about your elk hunting setups and stuff like that. So we're looking forward to it.
Don't bring a light arrow. If your arrow is under 560 grain, do not go with that arrow.
You know, there was an excellent podcast that really makes you do some thinking about a lot of things that was on, it was on the Hoyt podcast with Danny Ferris, and they had one of our guys from Farmington that owns a shop over there that's been collecting data now for a long time, and came out with some interesting things from that data. And whether or not you agree with it or not, it brings up some interesting conversations and stuff. And it's a good thing to listen to like that. So
I'll check it out.
Yeah. In fact, there was just one with Dudley, because Dudley has now come back to Hoyt. And there was a really great conversation there about some of the things with arrows and bows and stuff that every time you listen, you might learn something. If anything, it gets the juices flowing so that you play. And, you know, when it comes to your arrows and your setup, what works for you, because I tell you what, Luis looked at my setup that I've used for 30 some years, and, you know, he's like 477, you know, what the heck, man, you know, but elk died.
Killed a lot of elk. Yeah, elk died.
Killed a lot of elk. Yeah. So,
exactly.
You know, you got to do what works for you. And there's some things that we can do that's going to help. And Luis is just, I mean, he's very passionate about what he does, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be a good deal, man.
It will. Guys, you know what time it is? It's time for the ElkBros shout-outs. If you're new to our show, these are just shout-outs to our followers of a few cities with the most listeners topping our charts this week, Joe.
Yep, and Chav's rocking it, the first one.
Okay, this city is the original state capital and the site of the only Civil War battle fought in Indiana. It plays host to the Harrison County Fair, which is the oldest continuously running county fair in the state. Home to nearby Wyandotte Caves, a public cave rich in Ice Age fossils and Native American artifacts. And this is in Corydon, Indiana.
Corydon, Indiana. Yeah!
Man, that is definitely in the Midwest there. Corydon, Indiana.
Yep.
I have no idea where that is.
Midwest.
Yep, Midwest.
All right. This city is named after a famous city in Switzerland, reflecting its European heritage. The natural lake it's named after was formed by a glacier during the last ice age. Paulus Park and Breeswald Park are popular recreational areas, home to several oak trees, some of which are over 200 years old. Lake Zurich, Illinois.
Lake Zurich in the house, Illinois. Man. Indiana, Illinois. Awesome. We get a ton of listeners from Illinois.
That's fantastic.
It's really cool. So I'm up next. Located on Vancouver Island, What an incredible place, too. This city is known as Harbor City. The former Hudson Bay Company outpost has 2 modern claims to fame. It is known as the bathtub racing capital of the world, which I think is just beyond cool. This race on motorized bathtubs, we just don't have bathtubs,
You get to build one with a big block in it, man.
Is held annually in July. Second, it's the home of Nanaimo Bar, Canada's iconic no-bake dessert bar made of layers of crumb crust, covered flavored icing, and chocolate. Man, if my wife said, we're going to be on our way next year. Nanaimo, British Columbia, Canada.
Our brothers to the north.
Yes, sir.
Wasn't there somewhere else that had a bathtub race?
Yeah,
we just had that. Yeah.
I think it was across the bay or something from this place, man.
From that British Columbia place.
I think both of them are trying to lay claim to fame to the same
thing. I mean, how do you come up with a bathtub race? Like, where does that even?
So, as a kid, I actually competed in this, man. We had a milk carton boat race.
Oh, yeah.
And
they used to do soapboxes around places,
Yeah. Soapbox. I mean, that's perfectly
American.
Perfectly American.
Bathtub? Hey,
bathtub? Come on.
Yeah. It's something to make it fun, man.
Interesting.
Definitely. Well, guys, this next city with a Hollywood titled movie is located on the fertile banks of the Red River Valley. It experiences some of the worst extreme weather in the United States. Temperatures range from over 100 degrees in the summer, like here in Texas, to well below -30. Thank God we don't get like that here in the winter. Nationally recognized as one of the best places to live list, it's home to baseball's legend Roger Maris, who broke Babe Ruth's home run record in 1961, and that is Fargo, North Dakota.
Fargo.
Yeah. Great movie, too, if you've ever watched the original Fargo.
Yeah, you're dating yourself a little bit, too, on that.
No. It's not too early. McDermott played in it, and I forget the other.
Guys over there going, I don't know what y'all are talking about. Fargo.
If you want a really wild movie, watch Fargo.
I didn't realize that the 90s version wasn't the first one.
Yeah. It is not?
No,
I thought it was.
Is that the original? Is that?
Yeah, I thought it was the original.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's really good.
Might be. But all I know about North Dakota is Gil always tells us the same story about we call that the Rapture Highway.
Rapture Highway. Yeah.
Rapture Highway.
The Rapture Highway. Yeah, I was traveling up there in the oil field. I was working some vacation relief for an agent that worked for me named Boone Herring, and he worked with Smith. And Luis Gonzalez is where I met the leader of the Venezuelan Mafia. I met him on a drilling rig just outside of Killdeer, North Dakota. And anyway, I was coming out of Fargo, headed that direction, and I must have drove towards Williston. I must have drove 3.5 hours, Joe, and I hadn't seen a car on the highway. I told my wife, I said, get the phone out. I got to call my mama. She said, why? I said, because I think the rapture's come, and if Jesus came, she took my mama first, and if she don't answer, I know it's come, because I ain't seen a car on this road. So, yeah, I'm telling you, it's very, I wouldn't say it's very lightly populated. And there's that highway that we were on, Joe, I can't remember the number. It's ended with a 5 because it goes east and west. But it is, it doesn't have gas stations on the side of the road. They're like in the towns. So there is nothing on the highway but open highway, man. So like I said, I didn't see no cars for 3 hours. I said, you got to call my mom and see if the rapture'd come, because if Jesus came, I missed it.
I hear it's a pretty cool place, man.
It is a cool place, yeah.
So what pretty cool. I heard it's freaking freezing, man, in the winter.
-50 in places, man. I mean, yeah, it can get pretty brutal for sure. Guy, can you lead us out here?
Main content.
There we go.
Yeah, so this is an easy
Mailbox.
one, man. We're going to hit. We have so many questions have been hitting our ElkBros mailbox. So what we're going to do with this, y'all, is, man, we're going to hit some guerrilla warfare, man. We're going to get in, try to give you the answer that we can, help you out with it, and jump to the next one, because we'd like to get as many of these through as we can. So, Chico, I think you got the first question.
I'm up. I got my readers on here so that I can see what I'm reading.
Totally.
So, okay, Jed Booth from Casper, Wyoming. How do you go from elk hunter to elk killer? It seems like the moment of truth is the one sticking point, and I don't believe I have heard you guys talk about it in depth.
Ooh.
What is your thought process before it's time to let the arrow fly? What are you looking at or just before that release? How do you not freeze or overanalyze when you have one, maybe two viable encounters a year and the pressure to execute is high? There's a lot packed in that.
Yeah.
Whole
Good question. Real good
podcast
question.
on that one question.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of did two of them
Yes.
with that question
Finish.
in there, right? Yeah, the finishing part of it.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it's honestly, I believe it comes down to reps. It comes down to reps behind your weapon, and it comes down to those encounters, right? Those reps in front of those animals and kind of settling that nerve.
Experience.
And I think a lot of that is visualization for me is a big thing, right? Like if I'm on the 3D range, that's what it's about, right? But then putting yourself in that position over and over again mentally, I think that'll help a lot, Jed, if you're not sealing that deal.
Chico, what do you think, buddy?
You know, I think there's some depth here to that first part of the question about going from elk hunter to elk killer. And
100.
It's something that, we learn about since we're kids. And for me, it's more of a spiritual place that you're in. And you have to have, for me as a hunter, you have to have a relationship with the animal. And that's different for everybody. What's the relationship that you have with the hunt, the purpose? Why are you there? Why are you hunting? And then what's your relationship with this animal? So for me, being an elk hunter and an elk killer, those are one and the same.
Yeah.
And so, but there's a spiritual relationship. I think I explained when I was introducing myself to everyone is, that's a relative. And so they have a spirit just like I do. And when that animal is killed, that spirit gets released. And when we die, our spirit is going to get released. So we're related in that way too, because we're going to have the same experience on this earth. And then our bodies are going to go back to the earth too. So, but for me, it's about having the relationship and understanding what that relationship is, because it's an emotional time for me. As soon as that arrow goes and that's a kill shot, there's a wave of emotion that comes over me, and it's everything. It's joy, it's sorrow, it's
everything.
It's the full range of emotion.
Yep.
And so, that has to be, you have to process that before you go out and get into the woods and do that. What is your relationship with that animal, and what is your relationship with hunting? That's a threshold question for me.
Yeah. And for me, I hunt hungry. I never think about, I don't think about failure. I don't think about pressure. I mean, I get in on a critter, man. It's like my eyes glaze over and I'm focusing on how can I get the shot? How can I get the angle? Where's the shooting lane going to be? I'm going to take this animal. So my focus is on finishing. My focus is getting in. And I tell you, once I decide I'm gonna kill an animal, I don't look at anything. I don't look at the eyes. I don't look at the horns. I'm looking at where they're going. I'm looking at the country. I'm reading, everything around me, trying to put myself in the best position. And I don't worry about blowing it up. I don't worry, and I don't count the number of encounters. In fact, if anything, I'll blow one up because I know I'm going to create another one. And I think that's the other thing. I think when you get better at creating those encounters, you get better at, finding and putting yourself amongst the animals, finding those elk and putting yourself in with those elk.
Yeah, it gets easier.
Yeah, I mean,
Reps.
I shoot enough that I don't worry about that part of it. The rest of it now is just getting in and finding my spot and then and just shooting, man. I'd look, find, and then I'd kill. So I think that's the biggest thing with me.
Yeah, I think as you get older, you want to make a good shot, an ethical shot, but a kill shot, because you don't want the animal to suffer a whole lot.
Absolutely.
And I think if you get that shot, they're not going to suffer a whole lot.
Well, I think men need to understand what their range is, what their effective range is, and not get past.
Right, exactly. You got to pass up some shots, and like Guy said, sometimes you only get one encounter, so you got to make it a good one. But as you get older, I think that the nerves kind of disappear.
Yeah, it's a calm place for me, being in the moment there. Part of it's training that I've been through. But after it's let loose, I'm like Chico, man. I go to pieces. I mean, absolutely lose my ever-loving mind. And especially when I've known they're down or now I've taken that life, so many emotions go through me. But to get to the kill spot is a place where you need to focus. And it has to be a hyper-type focus where, man, I'm going to win here, right? And it's training. Guy said it. Joe said it. It's being in that moment. And when we make that last cow call and we've drawn and the bull stands broadside, I already know where I want to take him. I know where I want to take him, and I know where I want to put the arrow. And it just seems to go there, right? It's almost an event that you're not even conscious of, but you're conscious of. You know what I mean? And finishing gets easier, fellas. The first one, it'll get easier. The second one comes, and then the third one comes, and it really gets easier. So what I tell guys all the time, man, get one under your belt, and those things will get easier for you.
And then not to belabor it, right? But what's a viable encounter, right? I mean, if you're behind your string and you're getting those reps and you're working on your calling, I mean, are we talking a 20-yard broadside shot, right? I mean, what's a viable encounter?
I think anything inside your effective killing range, guy.
Right, but I guess I would want to know what's stopping his execution to the finish.
Oh, right?
Gotcha. So,
from him,
right? Yeah, you know what I mean? So there's like this, he's hitting this wall.
Sounds like he freezes up a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. But is it actually, I mean, is he looking through a window like this? Does he have a 12-foot
Well, you get
lane
lost in the encounter. I remember my first one, man. You get lost in that encounter. The bull's screaming, he's peeing everywhere, his eyes are bloodshot red, and he's walking up to you, and everything you know about bow hunting runs out to cracker your tail end. Because you lose focus, and the reps is what you're talking about. Bring that focus. The training, man. The training that you have. I told Joe that. I said, man, I kill 1,000 whitetails a year and hogs and everything. It ain't the same. I'm just telling you, right? They're 10 times bigger than a whitetail, and if you thread the eye of a needle for a whitetail at 40 yards, it's like throwing a hot dog down a hallway. It's pretty easy to do, man, when you put it in that perspective. But it's not easy to get yourself in the position to finish, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of guys have a hard time drawing their bow, Guy. I think a lot of guys get the encounter going, but they got the bull coming head on, and they don't ever draw their bow for lack of fear of spooking the animal. I've had several friends of mine that I've called bulls in. They don't draw their bow. And when you're telling them, draw, they don't draw. And they're just mesmerized in the situation.
Jed, I'd tell you, man, learn to enjoy the moment and not be thinking about what the outcome has to be. Enjoy the moment, get into the moment. Like Chico says, this is spiritual, man. It's something special, and I think that's why we do what we do. And there's a relationship that's there, and you have something that you're going to do. Enjoy it. Look at what you're doing. Enjoy the competition. Enjoy the encounter. Enjoy the relationship, and then you'll find yourself in position to get that done. Okay? Guy.
Train.
Derek Amp Baker from Florida. He has 4 questions here, so we'll see how we attack him as we go through. I'm arriving early, and we'll have a scouting day before the early archery season starts. If I find elk the first place I check, Should I stay there and watch them to figure out their routine, or should I go find other areas with elk? Easy answer. Why leave elk to go find more elk? If you got them there and you're a day or two early, absolutely stay on those animals and get as close as you can, as soon as you can, without busting them out. But man, never leave them to find them. If you know where they're at, you're going to be disappointed when you trek over to Plan B and it's not the same, not the same size herd, or you don't have the same quality of animal, or you strike out and don't have any animals.
But I think he said he's arriving early and he has a scouting day. So if he locates them in that scouting day, should he then go find another area during that scouting day and try to locate some other elk over there?
I wouldn't. I would stay right there. I'd watch those animals. I'd see if I could put them to bed, see where where they're feeding, where their water is, right? If you have a day to suss that out, why? Right? I'm going to leave these elk here. Wow, they're here. I got, I hit a god dang grand slam, but I'm going to settle for a base hit. If I go to Plan B area and I get over there, there's nothing. What am I going to do? I'm going to run back over to the animals I found. And now I've cut down the information I could have gathered about the herd that I saw first, right? I want the information on that herd right off the bat.
I think the difference is my information is not like a visual seeing the herd type thing, because when I get a scouting day, I hit all the 2 tracks, I hit all the muddy roads, I just go on all the travel routes and I'm noting where I'm seeing the crossings and stuff. So
this gent is coming out from Florida. So if he's driving to Colorado, Utah, Montana, Idaho, he's driving what, Gil? You're the driver.
17, 18
miles,
hours. Yeah.
Right.
17, 18 hours.
I'm not risking that on a 7 to 10 day hunt, especially if I don't have, Joe Giglia years under my belt and understand that whole thing. I want to be in the animals, and in my head, that increases my opportunity right off.
100%, brother. When we're fishing tournaments, we're only as good as the area we're in. If there ain't no bass there, we ain't catching them. It's the same thing with elk. If they're void of the area, you're not going to find them. Now, you can call and help that, right, to get them to come to you if you're proficient at that. But if there's nothing there to call to, we're in a void area, which we have done before. We've been in an area where it was very sparse. Joe made one little pivot and came back to camp, said, we're moving the whole base camp. And the day before we're supposed to start hunting. And we did move that morning, went over there and sacrificed an afternoon, but we moved that morning, hunted that morning. And I think y'all had an opportunity to kill a bull, didn't you, Joe? And just, didn't finish, but had an opportunity, and the boys did too. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you gotta, I see where he's coming from, but man, guy's right. I've never left fish to go find more unless, I had plenty of time to do so.
Well,
but if you just got one day,
saying. If it's me, Derek, man, and I got there and I had a whole day, and when I talk about driving a place, you got to understand I don't do 20 miles, man. So what I'm doing is I'm doing an area within so much distance, and I'm just on those, and I'm checking, and I am marking every place that I saw multiple tracks on there. And then that evening, I'm going to go for my best bet, try to locate, have something that I put to bed at night and be on it in the morning. But I do try to find out. And when I mark it all, sometimes I find out that they're moving from one area to the other and how they're going and stuff like that. So for me, I always have an A, B, C, and I like to know in my mind when I look at a map, I'm on elk here, I saw elk there, I saw elk there. I'm definitely going to hunt the elk that I put to bed or that I'm on. I'm definitely hunting those critters, man. But if something happens that blows up and I need another place to go in the evening, or I need a different type of evening hunt, depending on what everything is, I just like to have some things in my mind already that I work out. And what's good though is we hunt in a group, and if you're hunting with a buddy, we go to different places. Me and Chav would always go different places, different directions, and we would locate like that. When we have a group of 5, we can all get out there and pretty much peg up a place, man, and know what's going on there and come back with a report and then make decisions. And then we can all hit different areas at the same time. So when you're hunting in a group, it really helps you expand and be in elk more, because somebody's going to be, the one doing that. So
it helps to know the road systems too. So
100%.
Check that out.
The other thing to remember too, it's not just about how much time you have. if you're coming from Florida, you got to understand how much energy you're going to have at altitude. Because
right,
you know, you got to measure your unless you're an elite athlete, you're going to feel that altitude when you get up there.
Ask Adam Messner. He's an elite athlete, bro.
You got to build that in. You got to build that in even to your scout day, because you don't want to start your first day hunting and you're already wiped out.
Yeah.
Right. And don't go out calling anything in on your scout day. That's all I'm telling you there. Guy number 2.
All right, number 2. When do you move from plan A to plan B? Is it based on time looking but not seeing elk or sign? Give it a day or two? ? Man, if you ain't seeing sign, fresh sign, move on. If you're not in the elk, move on. Right? Yep. Get out, right? Don't
need
waste
3 days
time
to look at dry poop.
Yeah, I mean, just look at how I evaluate my areas, right? Is the terrain and how much can I cover in a half a day, right? If I cover my area in half a day, say it's, throw a number on the wall there and say it's 5-mile loop in that basin from ridge to ridge, up and down. If I cover that and I'm not seeing anything, man, I'm not giving it a day or two. And the way that I hunt is, I always compare it to like Olympic rings, right? If my plan A area is, X amount of square miles, that I need to cover as much as that as I can, varied terrain, et cetera, and then, features and things that the elk want to be in, water, food, et cetera. So I'll Olympic ring that, and it's generally a half-day circle. If I can complete it in a half day, nothing's there, I move on to the next ring. And I just do that all the way back to where I started, and then that's how I kind of ixnay. Now, the caveat to that in my head being I have all month to do that, whereas most folks are, we'll call it
7 days, 10 days.
Yeah.
Leave no elk to find elk, man. I tell you, I get in there, and if I don't find them in the morning, and what I mean by find them, if I'm not seeing fresh sign, if I'm not finding droppings or urine, and I'm not running ridges bugling. I'm down in those places where elk should be, man. I'm on their highways. I'm going, in those transition areas between feed, between bed, and those trails and tracks that they should be on. And if I'm not seeing it, I'm Gandhi and I'm going to the next one, man. That doesn't mean they won't be there 3 days later, but I'm already moving on to the next one.
All right. What factors keep other hunters away that you can use to find lower hunter density other than distance from roads, steep terrain, and proximity to private land? Brother, you are not going to get away from hunters, recreators, folks out exploring and taking pictures and whatnot. And I'm not
chainsaws.
Yeah, I'm not the, 13 mile a day guy. But I drop in pretty daggum deep and I'll come across a guy or two. Yeah, my numbers are a lot lower, but when you look at a unit overall, it goes back to what Chav said, right? Road systems, knowing your road systems, because the more roads you have through an area, the less likely you are to get away from them, and just the difficulty of the roads, right? If you have these improved county roads going through an area, anybody can blaze through that, right? Yeah. Joe talks 2 tracks and whatnot a lot. But man, you see that. What I tend to do is look for those horse-only type trails. You get on those horse-only type trails, at a remote trailhead or something, and you're probably going to fare a little bit better with crowds. But, banking on getting away from crowds, it's a rough one nowadays.
I don't try to get away from crowds. I don't worry about people, man. And so one thing that I do, though, is I don't drive 13 miles to a trailhead and then start hunting from there. I generally hunt that area before you ever get to a trailhead, and I'm hitting those places on the sides. I don't worry about places that have a lot of high-use people or activity in there. I really don't worry about a lot of hunters, and I think the best thing I do to lower my density is I generally hunt when a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't like to be out there before daylight. They don't want to be out there during midday, and they don't want to be out there after dark. So I think you cut down a lot of people just by doing that.
And part of that too, and I don't know how many episodes I've said it on, right, is play the chessboard. There is absolute benefit on playing off of someone's game, right? I mean, I don't know how that sounds coming across, but I tell you what, man, if I know there's elk in the area and I know I got, 3 guys here, and here on this ridge, and they're sounding off, those elk are going to do something a little bit different, right? And you got to learn how to play the chessboard with the numbers that we see in the woods.
I think guys, exactly right. You're not going to keep away from other hunters. You got to learn to live with that. You're going to call some in, and then just be courteous. They're out there trying to do the same thing you're doing, even though when they come in, they got the wind right up their butt. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a good opportunity to have a little education time and introduce them to the ElkBros podcast, whatever it may be, man. But we generally do encounter some people when we're out, right? And it's a really good opportunity to meet some new people and pass on your knowledge. And a lot of them will give you plenty of knowledge of what they know. They may be locals, right? So if they are, they may know a whole lot more than you are. So if you listen a lot more than you talk, generally it works out.
I will say, based on his next question, I would think that it would be a good thing that you have some type of numbers around you, based on this next question, right? Because man, the pack out is a lot easier with 2 or 3 guys than it is with one on one of them bulls. So
Yeah.
that was the segue into question 4. And this one, I mean, he bolds me, right? Question for Guy. I'm going out for 2 weeks solo. What are the mental challenges of being alone that long, and how do you get through it? I'm sure that Chico can answer it, Joe can answer it, Chav, I mean, even Gil, right? I mean, there's no, in my head, there's no difference between 3 days and 30 days when it comes to September. I live for September. It doesn't matter. It's actually where I get in contact with my creator. I leave my baggage. I'm out there in nature and making that connection every single year in September, right? It is literally my reset. When I come out of the woods, I'm a much better, much stronger, much clearer person, better husband, better father, better businessman. I mean, you name it, bro. It is absolutely beneficial, right? So going into and me and Chico are going to have to do a episode on my podcast so we can get into the spirituality part of that, because that's huge for me. And I think you're going to have to be okay answering the questions that you ask aloud. You are going to talk to yourself. You are going to, and that helps you through it, right? But then it'll also allow you the time to analyze what you're doing, right? And if you talk about it while you're out there, it sounds weird, because I'll literally hold a conversation after an encounter or after I'm getting my butt kicked, and I'll talk through it, man. But I tell you, the biggest thing is sitting on the top of a ridge on some rock, and you're subalpine, and it's clear as all get up, and you can look up and you can have a conversation with your creator, man, and that's a lot to get you through it. Or you could shoot a FaceTime to Gil or Joe. That's usually the 2 folks that I hit up when I'm on the mountain and I catch a little bit of signal. But don't look at it as it's a challenge, right? Look at the benefit to being out there. Most people have this fear of being out there solo to some extent, and start talking to yourself about walking through that and working through that and what that means in your growth, as a person, right? And being part of the circle of life when you do that. And I think you'll find a lot more than you will if you're just out there, hunting solo for 2 weeks.
And have a safety net, man. I think it's really important for people to understand where you're at, have a check-in system with somebody, whether it's your wife or kids or whatever it is. And, I mean, it's easy to turn an ankle, twist a knee, super easy to do those kinds of things when we're solo and we're not in a base camp, or we're down in a drainage. It's really hard to get cell signal or satellite. I mean, have some system, whether it's either inReach or Zoleo or whatever you may have, so you guys can, make sure and you feel confident with it, because that builds confidence when you're not worried about, what if, right? If you have some systems in place that you can have where you feel safe, even if something does happen, you can help, either get yourself off the mountain or get an animal off the mountain as well.
Yeah, you gotta have a safety net.
Yeah.
And I just tell you, man, it's the same thing I told you with, the nerves and everything when you have an animal in front of you, is learn to enjoy the moment, enjoy the hunt, enjoy
Breathe.
where you're at, enjoying the process of slow things down. I think a lot of people beat themselves up and they feel like they're in a race that they have to have this happen, have to have that. Nothing has to happen, man. Some days it might be a day where you just want to sit up on the side of a hill and look at things and enjoy that, enjoy all parts of the nature. Not just the elk hunt. There's so many cool things that happen out there in the mountains, man. And, we'd do things where we would just go jump in a creek and take a bath, or get in our own little waller, and enjoy things while we're out there, and take those special moments. Maybe even do a little fishing, do something that's a little bit different. Make that an experience, not just a hunt. Make it an experience. And man, the days just go by so fast that you're like, where did it go? Right?
Yeah.
Cool. I got the next one. And the next one is from Stony Newberry. That's Charlie's boy from
really?
Yeah. How do you say
Texas.
that?
Bronte,
Texas.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So he said, I was hoping that on a future episode y'all could do a demonstration of the difference between calf calls and cow calls, and maybe the time between each call in a scenario, different tone inflections. Thank you all for that in advance. So look, man, it's just like anything. You got one that's mature, one that's not. It's just like the same difference between when you cry and your baby cries. You got that little short with the baby, and we're just wallering over here because we have the maturity in the different voices. So your cow calls. So with the cow call, you're going to see where you have a pitch and it's going to drop off. Okay. They can extend that. They can do different, like when you talk about inflections. Generally, when those mews get longer, the chirps are shorter. And I've heard just when they just go through the woods, just chirping like that.
They walk right up to you doing it.
Yeah. And the calf calls, and if I could teach you how to do the calf calls, it's like when you're doing a cow call, you're pushing from your diaphragm, from your stomach. So you're pushing that air, and then you're just dropping that tongue off, and that's where you get that. You get that finish on that. And you can do things like adding voice inflection to make it more nasally. So that's your cow. Your calf, it's just a short push with that diaphragm. It's just a light touch, and it's actually the top of the cow call. So the top of the cow call has that, and it goes, and the calf is just. And all I'm doing is just a little hit with the diaphragm, and I'm up at the top where that cow call is. Okay, so you're just doing it that way, and you mix them, and you can even make it a little bit more mature calf. Little louder, a little bit higher pitch with that, a little younger, a little softer, and you work that. Now, I have guys that work that, and sometimes when they do the calf, they're like, and they're not like that, man. It's more relaxed.
A different varied cadence. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a different varied cadence.
Mm-hmm. And generally because they're lost. So they're doing it a little bit more where a cow call is not going to be like that. Yeah. And that might be all they do for a while, dude. Unless they're in with the herd, or unless they're banding, or unless they're doing another call, like they're trying to do a regathering, or they're being insistent, or they're doing something like that. Or if they're lost, then if they're lost, you got something like And then it gets more repetitive and it gets more urgent like that. So when you add quick repetitions, that's more emotion, it's more repetitive, it's more I'm in trouble. When they're spaced out, it's because they're just calm and they're just doing their regular talk or their regular muse. Okay, so hopefully that helps you out, Stoney. Anybody else with that, or we good?
No, but I'm gonna incorporate the first question that Bronson Worley from Colorado asked, because Stoney also asked about the time between each call in a scenario. And Bronson also asked, how often am I calling when I set up rhythm and tempo in a herd of cows, that type of scenario?
You got to do things so that they're natural. How often am I calling? Generally, when we'll do something, I'll do something like, this is just my rhythm. And look, this is just me. Everybody has like different things, bud. So my rhythm is I'll do something like, I'll try to do it in different directions. And most of the time, I'm doing it through my tube. So it'll be, and I'll make it sound like 3 different cows. And I'm done after those 3. Okay, and I'm letting that go, and I'm letting that marinate for a while, letting them hear that. And you'll hear us talk about marinate, and we totally believe that. You got to let those sounds linger out there so that those critters hear it, they heard it, then they're either going to come your way, you know. Now, if it's where you're trying to do a cow party where there's multiples and you got other people that are with you, like I have Gil with me, you'll hear us kind of space it out and do it. And you don't want to do a hoochie mama. You don't want it to be.
Yeah. Doesn't want to be redundant.
Yeah.
You know, you want to vary it. You know? Sound like multiple elk in the group, you know, and even put a bow call in the middle of that. So there's a young bull there with them, you know. But when you do it with a partner, you can actually make that sound, but you can do it yourself too if you understand how to make the cadence right.
Right.
And for me, when I first started out, I'll never forget, I called a bull in from my buddy Steve Tucker with Carl Gamage sitting next to me. And he said, okay, every 3 minutes, I want you to cow call. Just one. Yeah. And that was it. Don't say another word for 3 minutes. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was just listening to Carl. I knew I could make the sound, you know. And so, we did that for 25 minutes. And all of a sudden, I hear something coming from behind me, and it's kicking logs and rocks kicking. And I turn and look, and it's a big old 5x5 comes off the side of the mountain out into the middle of an open field that's 300 yards across. Okay. And he is looking for that cow, man. And Steve Tucker messed that up so bad, not killing that cow. Carl wanted to choke him. He wanted to strangle him because that was the first bull Big O'd ever called in, you know. And anyway, it was a lot of fun. But we did literally one cow. 3 minutes. I mean,
the bull that I called in for Bob, it was the same thing. I knew where that bull was at. I knew where, you know, he was going to be traveling. I called 3 times in 4.5 hours, and that bull came in. And the last time we called to that bull was 45 minutes before he walked down to us. Right. So I think we may get held up in the thought that we have to be calling, and it's really going to be what is the presentation. So to further that, I knew we had elk in the area. It was obvious their travel corridors were coming to kind of this pinch point, right? We had a travel corridor that ran to the north of us. We had a travel corridor coming down in 2 drainages that kind of came right to us where the bull came out. So I knew they were there. And when I initially called to that bull, we didn't hear anything for about 2 hours. Didn't make a peep. And then, 2 hours later, I hit a couple more calls, and that, and he was in his bed exactly where we thought they were at. And I told Bob, I said, he's going to come down here. We're just going to sit, wait. As the sun starts to drop, I'll hit it one more time. And the last calls that I introduced was a cow, and then off in the distance behind us, a nice little soft bull. And that sucker come out. I mean, he wasn't 50 yards, come right looking where we were calling from, right? Just, oh, where's the cow? And sometimes you just don't have to call. You got to be aware of the scenario. And when you do let that first call out, listen. Sometimes you get into calling and you're calling so much and that animal's responding, but he may be raking. He may just be moaning and groaning off in the distance. And if you're meow, 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 you're not going to hear him.
Yeah.
It can be windy too. The wind could be throwing it all off of you.
Yeah.
Same thing.
It could be high pressure, and the sound just doesn't carry as much in the high pressure.
Same thing happens when people are screaming. They do so much of a bugle set and stuff in there that they don't ever hear the response.
Yeah.
So I'm just pretty.
The average bugle is about 3 seconds. That's it.
If I carry mine for that long if it's a location bugle, but I'm two-toning, if not single tone, and then I'm off, and then I'm just listening. So.
And that is like Joe said, that's the time. Don't get in your pack, dude. Don't start grubbing through your stuff. You need to be listening, because I'm telling you, they will come in there so slick and they're so agile through the woods. You need to really have your head on a swivel and be really paying attention. But you could call every 3 to 5 minutes one cow call or a calf call. I mean, the great Chavez O'Shea taught me something last year in Canada. We had some bulls that just didn't want to talk a lot. And he goes, Gilbert, when y'all drop in there, all I want you let Dylan cow call every now and then, but I want you to sound like a calf that's searching for his mama. Dude, we did that for 44 minutes straight, and no bull said a word. What
was the space between, bro? What was the space between? Like, you just didn't do it like all the time?
No, it wasn't continuous. We do it for 5 minutes and then stop, and it'd be 4 or 5 calls within that 5 minutes and then stop. So about every 5 minutes we were on that set, right? And then, but it was insistent, that calf call. And the last one, I kicked it off, and RC and Brian were up ahead of us, and it was just me and Dylan hanging back, and they were actually 30 yards from the bull, and they didn't even know it. He was in there in that thick stuff, and the bull answered us, and that was it. That's all he said one time. But they were able to slip in there on him and almost put an arrow in him because we stayed in that set that long. That really taught me that, man, you got to be patient, and you just got to believe. If you know the animals are there, like Guy said, the bull's there, the animals are there, just keep working, sounding like you're another couple elk off the fringe. The bull will get either interested or frustrated before long, and he will let you know his presence is there.
I mean, is there ever any point in that, though, right, where you're reading the room, right? Yeah. Can we overcall? Can we, you know what I mean? If nothing is making any sound, what's the consensus on that?
I'll say yes and no on that. Like for example, like if things are being quiet, like if you're seeing cows and stuff that are going by and they're not doing a lot of talking, then you don't want to be real chatty with them, man. Just like a little, and you're pretty much done with it if you're trying to pull something there. But at the same time, I've done scenarios where everything's been quiet, and where I actually try acting like a bull with cows, going to bed, just to get that coming back up. I think I've actually created ruts in areas, man, doing that, because you can actually do the same things that they're doing that causes other elk to want to come into that type of thing and actually be vocal sometimes. So I see both ways like that. And I think like what you're talking about, Guy, is like I stalked in one time on a group of cows with a bull, and I mean I slipped all the way in on them, and they're not talking, and the bull's not talking. Everything's quiet, and I get in right on them, and I throw out this daggum loud cow call and just blow the whole thing up, man. There was no cow that had worked its way into it. There was no introductions. Just all of a sudden, didn't read the room, so and blew it up. Right.
Okay. And Chav, I think Bronson, the first part of Bronson's question, I think Joe hit on it here just a second ago. I think if he does 3 a couple cow calls and a calf call, and then wait 5 minutes and do it again, I mean, I think he'll be fine. 3 to 5 minutes, and that's your scenario, right? Until you get a reply or an answer. If you sat there 45 minutes,
they come in silent.
An hour doing it, or they come in silent, then if you haven't seen anything or heard anything in an hour, 45 minutes, probably time to move into the wind, right? And change locations. Right?
I think, sorry. I
just want hunters to know I've killed way more silent bulls than I have vocal bulls.
And part of that question, right? And for whatever reason, this is what I visualize. There's a guy standing in one direction. And he's looking in that direction, right? He's looking shoulder to shoulder, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you got the wind in, smack dab on your face, right? You need to be 100, scanning 100.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And depending on where you're at, if you're on slope, whatever, right? I'd be 360 on that sucker. So don't think that, hey, I'm putting on a scenario. The bull doesn't know your plan for that shooting lane. The cow doesn't know your plan for that shooting lane, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, don't get locked into this periphery here, in between your shoulders. And I see it happen all the time.
Well, especially when you're partners, you need to have one guy looking this way, one guy looking on the 6, because invariably they're coming from the 6. And it doesn't matter if it's downwind or not, man. I can't tell you how many times we've turned around and there's a bull looking at us at 40 yards. I mean, it just happens. So anymore, we just go, 180 out, and everybody's looking at in the right location. So
number 2, Chav.
Okay. Number 2 and number 3, I think we touched on, but I'll read them anyway.
Okay.
Is my safest play for a cold calling setup a herd of cow calves if I'm not picky on what sex I get? And number 3 says, how do I start a scenario set and decide what I should paint if I know they are in the area and just haven't heard them, but maybe I have smelt them?
Yes.
So, what I was going to add before was, do you want to start all the scenarios calling behind you, just in case that you entered a new area where there might be something pretty close to you?
It depends if I'm just doing a single or if I'm doing multiples. If I'm just doing a single, I always throw it back behind me, when I do that. If I'm doing multiples, I'm throwing one behind me out to the side. I'm trying to actually give the illusion of them being spread out in an area.
And more of them.
More of them. Yeah.
Yeah, because once you get in their bubble, they're going to pinpoint you pretty easy if you're calling right at them.
If you pick your setup area to be, let's say, using the terrain, and you're up on a rise, and most everything has to come up to that to get to you, sometimes they don't peg, man, especially if you're throwing things to the side. They're not sure if you're on the other side of the hill. I've had bulls actually come up and start going across my face, because they thought it was over there the way I threw the calls. So,
but in a flat terrain, they'll spot you.
Yeah, you want to throw those calls back behind you, right? But dude, me and Guy might be different, and I know like my buddy Jermaine's a little bit different. A lot of guys do things, but I'm always a lover before a fighter. That's me, and so I'm always going to start now. If I'm in a situation, it's early season and I've got bulls that I see there, I might start out with some light raking and a single mew, early season, because I'm just going to represent, they don't have testosterone really going at that mine. If they're grouped up in buddy, I'm just going to introduce myself as another dude in the woods and let them come check it out, but I'm almost always doing a mew of some kind. I think that's the best way to go. You can always introduce a bull, and I try to introduce it in a way that you can't tell how big it is, and so that's not a bugle or something like that. So
a light chuckle.
Yeah. So would you ever use a locate bugle that might draw cows to you?
You can, but I mean, if he says like he's going to do,
if he wants to kill a cow,
should I use cow calves if I'm not worried about what sex of the elk? And I'm like, absolutely, man. I think they're the most attractive. And you're
You
going
won't
to
get
do
a
most
cow
of
to
your,
come to you.
yeah,
You
you're
sound
going to
like a
location
calf.
bugle all the time anyway, you know.
Yeah.
So
Mhm. Okay. Question 4. When scouting, when do you think that it is appropriate to pattern a target bull prior to the rut, when they are bachelor herds or in the unit where they will be migrating back into?
let's see.
Yeah.
That is appropriate to pattern a target. Yo,
Yeah.
so he wants to know if when they're in bachelor herds, can you just pattern a target bull, you know, in that for that, you know, for that early season
Yeah. I
in
think
the
that'd be
unit where
kind
they're
of.
migrating back into.
I think that'd be kind of difficult since they're probably already seeking out the cows.
They're
You know,
moving everywhere.
the pattern just goes out the window.
Yeah.
So
Does.
Yep.
They get really nomadic.
I mean, you're
quick.
talking maybe the first 3 days of season, you'll get lucky if you get a bachelor group and decide, hey, there's that one.
Oh, that's exactly what I want. A bachelor group. Come hither. You getting the money.
I mean, it's right, but it's 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. Are they going to be even responsive to it? Right. We got into that 5 group or the 5 early season last year, and them dudes weren't making a peep, man. They had this little triangle they ran, and you know, that was one of them that one I called in for Drew was out of that group, and he was, you know, probably the second to the youngest bull in that group, and they weren't making much noise. But you know, a day and a half later, them boys weren't together anymore. They were gone. So I mean, if you get in that situation,
was he a legal bull guy?
Huh?
Was he a legal bull?
Oh yeah.
Oh cool.
I called him to Drew's toes, dude. You never even saw him. Broadside at like 17 yards.
Have you been able to pattern them, Chico, early season?
You know, I don't. That's always hit and miss.
Coming to Wallers or
there are two things with calling. For me, 2 basic rules. One is when you call, you're creating an expectation.
100.
So you're creating an expectation that if you don't fulfill that expectation, you're blown, right?
Yeah.
And then the other, I see it like you have to be like a good air raid college quarterback. You got to know your progressions, right? You got to go through your progressions.
Reads.
And that could you know, read number 1 could be a possibility of patterning a bull, but you got to be willing. You got to be ready to go through those progressions
audible
just as fast as a good quarterback does, because those things are changing in the field and on the fly. They're changing fast. But you got to always go back to rule number 1 is when you call, you create an expectation, and if you don't meet that expectation, then there's no use in calling.
They know something's up quick, man.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the 2 basic. Those are like the 2 things that I think about when I'm calling is what's the expectation I'm creating with the call, whatever it is, a calf, a cow, a bugle. Can I meet the expectation, right? And then the second one is, you know, especially once you're in their bubble, you gotta kind of think of it as I'm going through these progressions.
Good stuff.
His last one. Chav?
Okay, and I'm going to have you demonstrate after I give you my answer. There's a lip ball, and the challenge is the same, just different lengths and sharpness of drop, and they're very close to being the same. Basically, the lip ball, the bull's trying to get a hold of the cows or getting ready to round them up, and the challenge, well, he's going to scream top of his lungs, get that other bull mad. But
a lot of times he'll bark before he does it too.
Yeah. So would you demonstrate both with your grunt too, just so that
So when you get a lip ball, you hear that on that. You hear that on the front of it like that, where a challenge bugle, to me, has always just been a scream.
And it's really short.
Like that. Yes. That's a challenge bugle.
And a lot of times they'll bark before it. And then they'll scream that challenge, right?
Yeah, and it's just like, it's like a cutoff, and it's just like, you know, get out of my face right now. Yeah. Whereas a lip ball, and it can be done different ways. You can start with the tone and then lip ball at the end. You'll hear bulls they'll bugle up and then they'll go into that lip ball. and it's more of just a demonstration. It's more of, you know, like Chav said, he's like letting the cows know. He's like demonstrating for his cows, or he's demonstrating for bulls out there, saying, you know, basically, I'm the guy right here, right? And whereas that challenge bugle, you know, the lip ball is more of a chest puffing. It's more of a chest puffing to me. It's like a demonstration of, you know, look at me, just like when they go over and they rake a tree. That's a demonstration right there, okay? Whereas that challenge bugle, that is a in the face, you know, smacking you, get the heck out of here, bring it and I will kick it, right? Is what that challenge bugle is. And it's short and it's intense, and you can add that voice and that scream to it. And I tell you this, I mean, I think I hardly ever use a lip ball out there. I very seldom use a lip ball unless I'm trying to do something where I am trying to demonstrate at a bull's cows. Like if I'm in there and I'm trying to do that, you know, so I'm not talking to the bull, I'm talking to his cow. So I'll do that short demonstration bugle to those cows, right? Whereas with the challenge bugle, man, I've used that way more. And it's to the point where, you know, if I have a bull that comes in and he's starting to, you know, raise his voice at me, I will cut him off with that. But again, I just want you to know, everybody out there, that I probably killed more bulls come in silent than bulls that have been talking. And I've killed more bulls with cow calls only. And some people are like, well, when you say that, does that mean you never did a, you know, a bugle? No, I might have at one point. I might have done a bugle, got a response, moved in, cow called, and had a bull respond to that and just stayed with the cow call. But I've killed more with the cow call. I don't think I can really ever remember. Like I've had more people that I called for where I had bulls come in, you know, where they were screaming, than really my own situation. I think I had one bull that came in running, trotting, and had, you know, licking his nose and coming in. That you don't get a lot of that. You get more bulls sneaking in, you know, like they'll respond a lot of times to a certain point, and a lot of people are like, you know, well, he shut up. He must have got scared and went the other way. No, they're coming in and checking out the competition instead of just saying, I'm going to kick your butt. They want to know if they're visual more than they are auditory. So
this bull right here died because he was aggressive. I mean, Joe was wearing him out, dude, and that was all he could take. And once Joe challenged him, he was coming, whether it hair lipped the governor. And I mean, we had a boundary we had to get him across too, in game, set, match, brother. I mean,
Chico,
but again, it was really Joe being understanding our terrain, right? And I think that really played a big part. Joe knew what the terrain was. He knew where that bull was going to go, and we had to make a really quick move to get that done. And we actually, I can't believe we beat him to the spot, but we did. And by the time it happened, I was still out of breath. When Joe goes, are you ready? Are you ready? This is fixing to go down, brother. This is, I mean, look up there. He's coming over. And I mean, I looked up and it was ready. It was go time, you know? So,
Chico, I wanted to ask you, man, you know, in all of the years that you've been doing, what's the percentage where you've actually used challenge bugles and had a bull come into that?
Probably less than 15%, maybe 20%. Maybe probably right around 15%.
Yeah.
You know, and if you like, you know, when you guys are talking about, and by the way, I was able to eat dinner while you guys were talking, so that's how much you guys.
Yeah. You're a quick eater, Chico.
I had dinner while I laid out I got my little sushi box here. So, but anyway, you know, like you're talking about kind of the lip ball, right? Where if you have a chance to just go out there and observe, a lot of times you'll hear that when they're raking a tree.
Yeah.
And if you just can sit and watch, pretty soon you'll see other bulls come just to see what's going on. So it kind of fits with what you were talking about, Coach Joe, and those bulls weren't saying anything, right? Those bulls were quiet. So goes back to my rule number one. What expectation are you creating and how can you capitalize on that expectation? But, I would say, that real perfect scenario that you see on the YouTube videos all the time, for me, it's
very rare.
It's a low percentage.
Yeah.
But if you can be out there, if you can just take some time and you're not hunting, you're not doing anything, but you're just out there observing, all of this
I've learned the most,
it plays out right in front of you, right?
Yeah.
You can hear it happening and you can see it happening. And so, but it goes back to that expectation. What is the before you stick that diaphragm in your mouth and you push out a call, what is the expectation I'm trying to create? But you see that a lot, that real sputtery,
that lip ball,
where they are posturing, but you see that happening a lot, or you hear that happening a lot when they're out there raking trees and they're just they're just out there feeling
posturing.
So for the most part, if you're using a lip balm, you can expect something to come in quietly as opposed to a challenge call. Because I remember the one time the challenge call worked really good was when Gilbert called that big bull in for me, and we knew he was coming on the string. We could hear him.
We just kept cutting him off.
Yeah.
And challenging him,
Well, but here's the thing that I want to make to Chico's point as well, is that when you're observing them and you're hearing this stuff and you're seeing their posturing, that's the key word, see. They're seeing each other.
Yeah.
So when that bull is doing that demonstration, those guys come in silent. That bull ends up seeing them, and they're walking around the edges, and they're walking broadside to show each other off, right? So a lot of that communication and then that sound that happens from that and that screaming is because they are visually seeing each other. But when we call, we're trying to get them to come in on blind faith, man. They're not seeing another elk most of the time. So we're not able to, unless you have a decoy or something like that, we're not able to physically posture or even show another elk. So, you've got to be able to hide and make them look for that animal because they do want to visually see it. And most of the time, they want to see it before they start getting themselves all worked up, right? So I think that's an important point to remember. When you observe elk and you see a rut fest going on and you're watching that, there are bulls seeing other bulls, and those bulls are around the proximity that causes all that commotion to happen, right? You're trying to get them to come in to something that they're not seeing. So
that's right.
That's what makes it a little bit more difficult.
And Joe, Chav and I killed a bull one year, and Chav and I actually hiked back and almost had a bear eat us. But at the end of the day, we hiked back into a herd of elk, and we found them, and we just sat up on them and watched them from about 100 yards away. And I don't know that I've learned more in an hour and a half of just speaking with them. And we tried to not let them know too much that we were there, other than we were a part of the herd that was away from them. But man, I really got to see the bull interactions when you chuckle back at one, or when you're cow calling insistently and they're frustrated and they'll run out in the middle of that field and display and hook the ground. And I mean, it was just really an amazing time for me to understand the language.
And it's all visual demonstration too, what they're doing, man, when they do that.
And a lot of audio too. They glunk, when there's a hot cow in there. I thought there was a trailer being pulled by a truck coming down the road. It sounded so weird, almost like a tin can, sound. And it was those bulls glunking,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the coolest friggin' sound, man.
It is.
Everybody likes them bugling, but dude, I mean, it's proximity too, right? But when you hear them glunking.
Can y'all hear that?
No.
I must have my sound clicked.
Chico, you were going to say something a few minutes ago?
Yeah, just that the big bulls they're gonna position themselves where there are many other elk between them and you, especially if you're kind of working your way in on the fringes. Those bigger bulls they know to they're kind of in the middle of the action, and there's there's going to be other elk between you and them, and so they can see what's happening all around them.
Yeah, that's a key point, man. And that's one thing I try to tell people. When you hear elk and they're responding, you're moving and you're cutting the distance, don't get tunnel vision. Especially if you're in multiple bugles, man. There's other elk hearing that too, and they're going to be on the wings, man. So
Alan Hayden of Guide Rock, Nebraska. How do you hunt elk that come down from above tree line in the morning and go back up before dark? I would think he's talking about before evening time, before dark.
Thermals.
Yeah. It's kind of backwards to what I hear on most podcasts. When the thermals are coming down in the evening, they're leaving those timbered pockets just slightly before the darkness. I can't give above them, and I can't get above them when they're moving up because of the downward thermals.
Yeah, so they're actually bedding up there in timberline up there, and then they're, instead of it, being the one thing where they're down in their nighttime bed in the bottom and then going up on a ridge. And we have the same thing that happens, man. We have elk that'll be bedding on top of a mesa and drop off into the sides to eat and then go back up on top to bed, So to him, it's like opposite of what he hears in most places. And I'll tell you, shoot, Alan, man, in like places like Arizona, they don't go up on or down in anything, man. They'll work in some areas that are kind of flat, and they'll just bed down underneath a juniper or a pine tree, and it happens in the Gila where you just have a lot of those rolling things, man. They'll just work until they get in an area and bed down where they can get some shade, It just depends on the type of terrain. So anybody have any help for him where he's saying that they're down in the pockets and they want to go up and he's not able to get there?
Well, I mean, if we're in a situation where your predominant, right, is your thermal, then you need to come in on the side hill on them, right? And that's where you hear folks talking about getting on the same level as them and coming in, right? So if you understand their level, be it high, mid, or low, come in on that level, right? So that may change your approach, and you may look at this terrain and go, man, I'm going to have to do a 3/4 loop or a mile loop or come around 2 miles. But if that puts you on their level as you're fighting those thermals, then that's the way to go, especially if you know they're there. Don't just throw it to the thermals are going up and down, right? Get on that level and approach from their level, perpendicular to, that thermal effect.
And there's no such thing as a perfect thermal.
Right.
You have, and I talked about this a lot with the firefighters that were here when we had the big Hermit's Peak Cap Canyon fire. Some of the fire crews that came from all over, they did an amazing job, but they stayed here at the hotel with us, and they would get their briefings, and they were talking about how the wind swirls here. And I said, yeah, I mean, you're going to get, because the briefings that they were getting were from, high level guys from wherever, and they didn't understand the terrain around here. And I said, I grew up here. There's no such thing as a perfect thermal here. That thing swirls. And so you always got to be paying attention to and then pretty soon you'll figure out, depending on the terrain, how that wind swirls, because there is some predictability to it depending on the time of day. But just remember, there's no such thing as a perfect thermal up or down. When you get into that thick terrain, or when you get into canyons, things like that, even with the thermals, it's going to swirl in different directions. You always got to be aware of your wind.
Yeah.
And
good point.
Sorry. And if you're fighting, you call it the morning thermal, right? And the ground heat, the air is rising. Guess what that means? You need to get in prior to that happening, get on that level prior to it happening. That goes back to what Joe said, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes ago about, seeing folks that don't want to get out in the dark and want to wait until the sun rises to get out there and hunt, right? So, that in that situation, if you're doing that, you're kind of burdening yourself with fighting that too. So.
The next question is from Andrew from northern British Columbia. I live and hunt in northern BC, Canada. This will be my second season bow hunting elk on public land. Struck out last year, but had some good responses and sightings, specifically in a meadow right next to a good watering hole. What are your thoughts on setting up a tree stand and maybe throwing up a decoy?
We talked about the last podcast with Mr. Wapiti River, and everyone chimed in on kind of the perfect storm if you have that situation. There was a picture a gentleman sent us that had some cottonwoods in the background, and this is exactly the scenario that we were referring to. The difference is you got a creek bottom versus a watering hole, right? So I don't think we should answer the question. We should ensure that he listens to that last podcast, because we always like download. So refer to that one, brother from the north.
Yeah, and understand that. Hope that you don't have anything that happened to like Armando, where they're hunting the same water hole as other people, you know, and they're setting up on their water hole, and dude comes out with his climber stand and climbs up right in front of him, you know. Just understand.
That was interesting.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Yeah, bold move for sure. But you got to understand, you're hunting public land, brother. So, you know, when you're around a water hole and stuff like that, absolutely, it's a great place for a ground blind or something like that, or a tree stand. But you need to understand that there are others going to be around it too.
Yeah, and don't limit yourself to early morning and late afternoon.
Yeah,
you know, stay there during those off hours.
How many bulls you see in the off hours, Chav, at a water hole?
Yeah, plenty.
We could have all limited out right there in that one hole.
I think a tree stand is one of the most effective ways to kill an elk, but it's just not. I'm too ADD, and
yeah, not Joe's style.
I'm not built for it, man.
You're here one and need a parachute to jump out of it.
Plus, I'll fall asleep. You know, I mean, I'll fall out of the sunbuck. So
hey, that's the scary part, because I've done it a couple times now that we're going down there to Texas, and I'll doze off and
gotta have yourself tied in, man.
Yeah. But I don't even. But the problem is, you got the daggum tether, so I need to I carried the last time a 1-inch strap, and I threw that sucker around and put it around my chest.
Yeah. My grandpa, when I was a kid, he'd build these 16, 18-foot ladder stands. And he put a seatbelt up there, so you had to seatbelt yourself in it, you know.
There you go.
He was worried that I was going to fall out when I was 10 or 12 years old. So
I'd find a way to fall out.
He put a big rag bolt and a seatbelt in the side of a pine tree, and then the other side, click, click.
That's a good idea, man. That's a really good idea.
All right, Chico, you're up next.
Yeah, on that, I was going to say I'm the wrong person to ask about a tree stand too, because I can't have patience for it either.
You did start butting off with Joe.
A blind is another story. Blinds are good. Yeah. Ground blinds are good. Okay. Yeah. Dan from Santa Quinn, Utah. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
The area we hunt elk is spike or cow for archery. Hunt starts the third weekend of August and goes to the Friday after Labor Day. If it's been dry and warm for a couple days, I have a couple wallows I like to sit on. What are your thoughts on calling while sitting on a wallow? I like to call and do a cow party here and there. I probably do that every 20 minutes or so, sometimes a little longer. I have had luck doing this.
Yeah, if you're on the wallow and you're waiting for a bull, why not increase your odds by throwing out your calls while you're sitting on the wallow? There's no reason not to, right? I mean, you're there to kill that bull or that cow.
Mm-hmm. And if they've had luck doing it, you know, do what
works.
That's right.
Do what works for you. You know, I don't know how much you guys have talked about cow parties before, but you know, to me, again, it goes back to the rule number one about expectations. You know, if you're creating a situation or a scenario where it sounds like there's a bunch of elk, and you're doing it in a place where there's a wallow, it's, you know, at some point a bull or another elk is going to come around and want to see where all these elk are. So, you know, be smart about, you know, where you are when you do this. You know, a lot of times, you know, elk will bed up in the shade or in the timber over, you know, next to a wallow or next to a pond. You know, that might not be a bad place to get to get the calls going because you're kind of secluded and you're in the shade. The duration, the length of it though, I don't know, 20 minutes, is that a long time?
Yeah, well, I I would just do some of those calls, and if I'm doing multiples like that, and then I'm gonna have a long space in between, so that if they do come in, they know that there's a chance that they've moved off, and they might come check the water, come try to scent the area, maybe go to the water. So I'm not going to be constant on that because of the reason exactly what you're talking about, Chico. I feel like if I'm constant on it and they do come in while I'm doing it, number one, I couldn't hear them coming in silent because I was making all the racket the whole time. And then they come in, they're expecting to see elk that aren't showed up there, and that's a red flag. And a lot of times you don't even see the bull that does that. They come in there and you're making a whole bunch of racket, and they're looking and they catch you make a movement or something like that, and they turn and go out of there. So I think when you just do a little bit of a session and then just let it marinate for a while and listen, you're better off than just staying with it. Now, if you say 20 minutes is
not 20 minutes calling.
Yeah, it's 20 minutes of being there.
Yeah.
I think I'd be there, if you're going to be at the water hole and you're in the evening, you're there till it gets dark. So it's not a problem.
I do a session every 15, 20 minutes.
And August to September, they've got the right idea of being around the water because that's still hot.
Do you know I've never killed an elk over water, man, in 40 years. And it's not from trying, it's just never have, and we know that Carl's had a lot of success on some of those wallers, man, with the blind and stuff, and Chav, could have had some incredible success as well. So
I killed my bull in Colorado.
Yeah. But I mean, me just going out there and then finding a waller and saying, well, I'm just gonna, man, I would rather myself, again, it's that ADD. I usually want to be in that transition area from the bed to the water and try to get them instead of waiting for them to get there. Yeah. But that's just
we were kind of off the side of it, and we were headed up there. And when we got there, he was just on our heels, And then he came in. When he came in, he went straight to the water and went to eat some salad and get him a big drink,
And the elk have line of sight to that water from far.
I bet you.
They have line of sight from a long ways off.
Yeah.
So just because you're there, maybe there's some timber or something, and you can't see into the timber, they've got it figured out because they approach those water holes all the time, and that's where
they do it for a living.
Everything.
Predators are going to wait for them.
Yeah.
They have line of sight. They have line of sight from far off.
And Chico, I didn't think about that. That may be why it took so long for that bull to come in. Is he was really checking around him, and he ain't seeing any elk, right? He's hearing some, but he's not seeing any. And, he's coming in from a long way off, and he's got good eyes on it. We were smart enough to stay off in some aspen forest,
Well, so, that's why, earlier when he was talking about calling while on the wallow, for me, sometimes I felt like me presenting and letting them know there was an elk in there, that a lot of those guys were staying out on line of sight and looking, and they're hearing something and not seeing anything, so they end up boogering out. So I don't know, sometimes if you already have that attractant and they're coming to that, sometimes it's better just to not to say a word sometimes.
Yeah, and we hadn't probably said a word in 5 minutes, Joe, before he showed up. Maybe less, 10 minutes, but we were all there videoing those ducks, they were up in the wallow.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a caller, if you have somebody that's calling for you as a hunter, they can set up down by the water and you get set up in the timber.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And, before, as they're coming in, but
off the trail. Yeah.
Because I guess they can see that they've come to that water hole 1,000 times.
Yeah.
They know what they're looking for.
It's their sustenance. They have to have it to live.
Okay, this question's from Scott from New Mexico, and he asks, I've got a once in a lifetime first archery tag, and I've been doing a lot of scouting. I've seen a bunch of cows out and found some bulls tucked away in an area. I'm just wondering if those bulls are going to be in the same spot that where they are now, tucked away by themselves, how I can close a deal on a bull like that. how can I close the deal on a bull like that?
I mean, what's the proximity to the cows, right? I mean, if the proximity to the herd is such, they're going to want to be with the cows, so those bulls are going to come down, right? But what's the proximity from where you're scouting them to where you're seeing the herd?
He's got to be in the Vividal, huh, Joe? Once in a lifetime tag?
It could be. It could be the Via Vidal, or it could be the Caldera.
The Caldera once in a lifetime? Yeah.
I think
Yeah, they're going to be where the cows are.
Yeah, look, you go into the Caldera, don't just get out there and cow call, man. You're going to have too much fun because there's a lot of competition, man, and there's going to be bull after bull in that country, man.
And not near as many hunters.
Oh yeah, no, there's only very select number in the Caldera that get that in. I mean, there's enough bulls per hunter there, and I mean it's just an incredible experience in that thing. It's like unbelievable.
And good luck, Scott.
Good on him. Yeah, good on him for scouting since now. Good on him. But it's gonna change. It's gonna change come September.
He needs to find the cows where he finds the cows, and they're slaves to their bellies just like everybody else, right? But where he finds those cows, he's going to find the bulls.
Kill a big one, Scott.
Yeah, definitely. Pictures, babe. Send them in, Scott.
Yeah, get a big one.
Tom
Leonowitz.
Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. If your goal is to not have to ever go to a grocery store again, how would you become the best hunter? Would you focus on one species and become an expert, or would you hunt year-round for all species? Brother, if you ain't going to the grocery store, hunt it all. Yeah, there's no guarantee from season to season, right? If an area, and I don't know how Alberta manages their animals, but if you have management changes, if you have,
we hunt them all, baby.
Yeah, so I mean,
get a buffalo. Get a bison.
We hunt them all, man, from nilgai antelope to, white-tailed deer to wild hogs to ground squirrels here in Texas, man. I mean, my HEB is right outside in my freezer. So, I mean, I don't go buy much meat from the store at all. Maybe a little bit of chicken if I don't kill enough quail and dove and stuff like that. But, I mean, we hunt them all, brother.
Yeah. And there's no reason you can't become an expert on multiple species, right? I mean, if you make the decision that's, the type of approach you want to take, then maybe you have a yearly focus. And then with, seasons being what seasons are, there's separation. So you can focus half your year on, say moose and half your year on musk ox. I don't know what's up there.
Look, man, them boys need to hunt bears. I can tell you what they need to be hunting. Bear meat's good meat. It's good to eat.
And depending on how many people you're feeding, I mean, at one point I had 6 kids in the house, and so that was a lot of
mouths to feed.
All we ate was game for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And but an elk, if it's you and you and a spouse or you and a couple of kids, an elk will last you a while. An elk will go a long ways. We got a weird rule here in New Mexico. I don't know if anybody follows it, but I think you're only supposed to have game in your freezer for a year. You have to have, and then you got to get permission, I think, from Game and Fish. Did I read that right, Joe?
They have that rule with something like that, but there's not a single person in the state that ever does that. I mean, it's just like families that give meat to family members. You're supposed to actually give a letter of, where that meat came from with your license tag number. And I mean, there's all kinds of rules like that, but the gente is come calla, man. We just, we
don't say nothing, man.
We hand out the meat to each other. We give it to friends. We give it to relatives. And, I don't even know why that's on the books, because it's like you said, when you call, you should know what your expectation is. Yeah. When you make a law, you should know how you're going to enforce it. And
that one's got to go. That one's got to go.
Yeah, that one's got to go right there. I'm going to give one more here that from Kent Brill that I had, and it's a good question, man. He says, I know a lot of elk hunters, myself included, that have experienced using a cow call to have the elk stop 2 or 3 steps later, or sometimes not at all for whatever reasons. Have you ever had a bull elk not stop when you gave a cow call? What do you recommend to keep that from happening? Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's done that. And I think, I think a lot of time it's kind of like not reading the room. You end up in a situation where you got a bull and he's like, and you can hear him. Oh,
he's on a mission.
He's making some noise and he's coming through kind of quick. And you're like, yeah, and he's intent on going someplace and he doesn't hear it. And so next thing you know, man, he's already gone through where you're at. Now, if you have a bull that's sneaking in and he's kind of looking for that cow and he's walking like that, and and you give a cow, it's absolutely going to stop. Or if he's, coming through kind of quietly, I just kind of gauge the situation, man. If you have that, you can grunt at them, you can bark at them, you can bugle at them, and they're going to stop. If you really want to stop, just a grunt, and I have people with their voice, yeah, just like that, what Gilbert does. You just do it like that, or even just bark at them. I guarantee you they'll put the brakes on and stop and look at you, so.
You just don't want to go.
Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged.
Especially when they're coming.
Too close and too young. The cow was almost on my hip when I did it. I had to draw. The bull has got his head right in the rear end of the cow, man, and he's coming. And I had to do something to be able to stop him. And generally, I've used a bugle while I draw, but our bulls are a little bit more mature, And that young dude, man, he just like turned it. I mean, it looked like when your elk had them bug eyes up there.
Yeah, when my wife put the bug eyes.
It looked like a cartoon, dude. His eyes just went like that, and he turned inside out, man. It was like that.
Generally, man, we just cow call to him, and that's it. That's all you need.
Unless you've got like conditions that you're going to need to stop him. So
high wind will affect them too. They won't hear it, so you got to really put a little more volume on it,
And the further out they are. Have anybody else experienced where one hasn't stopped? I've had it happen to me.
Yeah, it's decision time there. If because there's that urge to go ahead and
let it fly.
I can make the shot, and you gotta resist that.
Yeah, don't do it. Their gait is so big, man, when they're walking. Their gait is so big.
But at what distance do you make that decision, right?
Past 20.
Yeah. At 10 yards is different.
Right.
Yeah.
Past 20.
Yeah. If he's walking at 10, I can, it's not a problem. But you get 20 yards out there, one step is 3 yards. So.
Our brother Bruce Gaynor one time had a bull that was, 8 yards from him, Joe? And he asked Joe, which pen do I use? Joe goes, all of them.
But that's
literally bull's like 10 yards, and Joe, he's drawn. This is a dead bull, dude. He draws on the bull's walking, looking right at him. He gets drawn. Bull does not booger, and he tells Joe, which pin? Dude, really?
So the bull actually, he draws because I tell him, you can see the horns because he's below us on elevation, coming up on the hill. So he draws. The bull comes up at 10 yards and screams in Bruce's face. And it's early, cold morning with the steam coming out like that.
So cool, dude.
And I mean, everything went out the crack of his rear end. Then the bull turns and he comes sideways at 8 yards. And Bruce is going, which pin? Which pin? And the bull walked off. He never shot.
Walked out of her life, bro. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
There's that 15% that makes it all worth it,
That goes back up to that dude up top saying, how do you not freeze or overanalyze?
Right.
Look, and this guy's a hell of an archer, man. He's an absolute assassin with a bow.
Apparently not.
In his face, he lost it.
He did.
Right.
Yeah.
I think he thought that bull was going to kill him,
or maybe made him. I'm being nice, Joe.
Hey guys, man, what a great show, man! And we still had more questions, but we're at 9:41 now. looking forward to the live, Gil.
Oh my gosh, that is going to be epic. It always is, you know, especially if we got Duplantier on. We'll have the censor button. Yeah, we'll try to stay on the rails because Joe gets worried, man. If we have the mafia in town with us, man, you never know what they're gonna stir up. So good to have Chico with us tonight, man, and
Absolutely.
his absolute wisdom of his whole life spending it in the New Mexico Elkwoods. So really appreciate you being with us tonight,
thanks,
Chico. You
Thank
bet.
you.
And guys, if you like what we're doing, you got to subscribe, rate, and review us. You got to go to Apple Podcast or iTunes to review us, and be sure to include your name and where you're from to get in on our Spinner Winner Wheel drawing. And you can check out more elk hunting content at ElkBros.com. And I know, Joe, you know, we're outfitters in New Mexico, licensed outfitters in New Mexico. We have unit tags available. If you guys are wanting to hunt a unit in New Mexico, we've got some tags available that are still, I think we got one archery tag left, huh, Joe? And
it's getting ready to go, and a bunch of other ones getting ready to go. But yeah, we have some
5 or 6
tags,
rifle
cow
tags
for Unit 53. Yeah.
So y'all reach out and holler at us. We got some really cool announcements coming up here in the next couple of weeks. It's gonna be absolutely special for this crew in New Mexico in a whole to be able to announce what is fixing to hit the airwaves. But I'm gonna let Joe. We'll plan all that out, and I won't break the news. But it's gonna be epic, guys. So yeah, just a reminder: if our listeners would like their questions answered on our show, please send your questions to joe@elkbros.com. And fellas, it's been awesome. But like we say here in the Lone Star State, husbands, kiss your wives. Wives, kiss your husbands. Hug your babies. Keep your broadhead sharp and your powder dry. And we'll see y'all next week right here on Blue Collar Elk Hunting. Peace.
Getting close.
Peace. Hey, don't forget, jump on Western Fly Covers. Get that order in. Use the discount code Big O, capital BIG, capital O, for 15% off your order. You got 2 days to do that. Season's coming. I'm shipping on a daily basis, and once September hits, Mom will be shipping probably on a weekly basis. So,
so you're not going to close down once the season starts then?
No, I'm gonna put it on Mama's shoulders.
The ElkBros Gear Shop will be closing down. So. Yeah.
For a couple weeks, for sure.
Yep.
We've been wearing Chav out, so we appreciate all y'all's business, guys. But, you know, and for all our grinders out there, here's some music from our brother Tony Wintrip to close out our show.
EW.
Peace, everybody.
Peace out.
Had a wallow down a deep draw, surrounded by some brush, and every time I'd see the white tips get the Rocky Mountain rush. A constant swing of thermals had him sniffing up the wind as the blood and sweat and tears of mine came rolling down my chin. I saw a monster with no shots to take, points on top like a garden rake, tracks as big as a Clydesdale on the run. And he talked trash to me while he ran away, and I'll be back to ruin his day when the elk gods come to call on malicious. And the temperatures start to drop, so I packed up ready to make my way up on the mountaintop. With a quiver full of 6 and 3 blades sharp and ready, my Hoyt was maxed out and all I had to do was hold her steady. Delicious was a man above a man. When he let the thunder roll, you could hear him all across the land. He was painted with a splash of mud, and he weighed more than $1,000. Now it's him and I at Timberline, and he's down to his last stand. Was a man above a man. When he let the thunder nigh a timberline, and he's down to his last stand. Now he slipped out on me one time, and he left a few behind. So I followed up the trail where his eyes soon met mine. And I greeted him with a Maxima Red and a musty 125. Yeah! Malicious was a man above a man. When he left the thunder roll, you could hear him all across the land. Yeah, he was painted with a splash of mud, and he weighed more than a grand. Now it's him and I on the mountaintop, and Malicious is in my hand.